When doing conversions or kit bashing, sometimes having the right bits just isn't enough. And we need to blend together two elements by filling a gap, or we have to resculpt some features that got damaged when cutting the model apart. Or we don't have the right bits to begin with, and we have to create a cloak, maybe even some fur covering it, or maybe some loincloth. Because
in the grim darkness of the future, there's only loincloths.
So in this video, I'll do my best to show you the important basics of working with epoxy clay and to make your kit bashes and conversions even better than they already are. What's up, fellow pigment pushers? A while ago I showed my sword brother conversion on Instagram. For this conversion, I had to reposition the hand and had to cover the resulting gap with the typical sausage roll pattern. Bellows joints, that's what they're called? That Space Marines have covering their articulate parts. And ever since then, I've gotten a lot of requests to show how I work with epoxy clay. So let's start the clock and I'll turn you into a sculpting pro in just 3 minutes. Let's start with the tools that I'm using. Sets like these are a waste of time. They're too big, there's too many shapes, and not a single one of them is useful. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is a bit of a sore topic for me. Because when people ask me how to get better at sculpting, I tell them it all starts with the tools. And then I give them a whole spiel, and afterwards they just go,
"Nah bruh, I have this tool, just show me how to sculpt with it."
And that's just not how sculpting works. You also don't paint detail on your 28mm minis with a tank brush. And even if you don't care how it looks, you just want to be fast.
I don't have all day.
When you have the proper tools, you'll just be as fast, possibly even faster, and your results are going to look so much better on top of that. I don't think I've owned any green stuff in the last 10 years, so I have to borrow some footage by other creators to illustrate my points. Here's Jazza using this tool, and sure, it creates volumes, but this is not the right tool to capture intricacies of muscles that integrate with each other. It's too big, it doesn't have the right shape, and it's too rigid. Again, I can hear people say, but it looks good enough. And yeah, okay, but if you had the right tool, it would look better with even less time investment. So why are companies selling you these tools as sculpting tools for miniatures? That's because they can't make money off of giving you the correct advice that a simple homemade tool will be more appropriate for the size. Again, remember this comparison. This is my Sculpting Workhorse. It's made from a brass rod filed into shape. If you're a hobbyist already, I'm sure you have one of these file sets at home. And if not, you can pick up a single small file like this for $2 at the do-it-yourself store. This tool is small enough and has a sharp edge, so I can cut through clay and carve it away if I need to. And I can create sharp edges. The other tool I use a lot is this color shaper. It's extra firm, size 0, and its shape is called angled chisel. It has both a round side I can use to flatten out clay and to spread clay on a surface, and it also has an edge that helps with getting inverted edges, as well as a nice tip for details, like I even use it to sculpt eyes on 28mm figures, just because it's that small. Color shapers come in different shapes. This one, for example, helps with curves and so on. I suggest getting the angled chisel shape to start with. You can always get additional shapes later if you feel like you need them or if you want to experiment. The best thing about this tool is that it's not rigid, but flexible, which means it conforms and adapts to shapes, which helps with applying clay on complex structures or while gap filling. Unlike a rigid tool, like a straight metal tool for example, that will always have troubles with curved surfaces. One last tool that I think everyone needs is a needle tool. The most obvious application is creating fur textures, but you can use it to sculpt all kinds of intricate details. Here's a couple of needles that I've found over the years. You can get them in different do-it-yourself store sets, or even build one yourself, like this one here, using aluminium wire and the files we already mentioned. I also picked up a set of these ball tools. They can both help with texture and also every time you need to carve some negative space, like when sculpting eye sockets or when you want to create a rivet of some sort. In general, each shop will have a certain tool that does it best. If you want to blend something together, don't use a rigid tool, but use a flexible tool that will adapt to your surface and that can press the clay into the tiniest recess and will smooth it out equally. If you want to sculpt a fine detail line, use a needle and not a blunt, oversized spatula without the proper edge. And if you want to sculpt the hexagonal indent, don't use whatever and spend 30 minutes on trying to get it somewhat right. Just use, you get the idea. So why am I using milliput and not green stuff? Milliput Standard is finer grained, which means it holds more detail, but it also blends together more easily. Here's a bit of footage from Jazza again, using green stuff, showing exactly what I mean. The blobs are just not easy to blend together, and you will always have lines between them, unless you know exactly what you're doing. So if you're a beginner, this is going to cause you all kinds of troubles. Milliput just has that finer consistency and blends together easily. Like, look at this, I barely touched the surface and it's blended. And even if you have not properly blended parts, you can just sandpaper it when it's dry and get a super smooth result. Another point, again, illustrated perfectly in this Jazza footage. Look at the texture where he cut the material. You can see the rough grain size. And if you want to smooth this out with green stuff, you'll need to cover it. But with Milliput, you could just quickly sand it smooth. In general, Milliput just has a lot more versatility. You can even let it sit a while and it's going to have a more green stuff-like consistency. And if it's fresh, you can get the super sharp details more easily. You can move it a lot better and it's not going to fight you that much. It's not going to press against your tool as much as green stuff does. Can you still use green stuff? Of course you can. You can use whatever clay you want to use. You could use cheap and flayed brushes or brushes that are oversized. There's people that will create masterpieces with bad brushes. But why would you add additional hardship to something? Well, I'm on a timer. But why would you want to add additional hardship to something you're just about to learn and that is already motorically and cognitively demanding? Just like if you were using tools that are not fine enough. Clay that can't hold fine detail, even though you have the ability, is going to hold you back. Milliput just does what I want it to do. And on top of that, it's water soluble, which means you don't need Vaseline or any stuff like that to smooth it out. Just a brush or a proper tool and some water. If you want to see the fastest way ever to fill gaps, you need to watch this video. And if you want more quick tips that you can learn in just 3 minutes, you're going to have to click this video or you're going to miss out. Oh, and let me know if you want to see more conversions on this channel. Thanks for watching, keep pushing that clay, and I'll see you in the next one.